Hi, this is Kelsey Cooper, and I'm the host for Disabled Birth Stories podcast. I hope those in the disabled community can enjoy these stories of bringing beautiful babies into the world and the journey along the way. I hope this podcast helps you feel seen, heard, empowered, and capable, no matter your journey to being a parent. I hope those who are able-bodied would listen to empathize with and support their disabled family member, friend, acquaintance, or random stranger. Thank you for listening, and feel free to email me if you have any questions or would like to be featured on the podcast at disabledbirthstories@gmail.com. Thanks for joining us today. After listening to this episode, please remember to rate and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Please also check the description for our social media links and the link to our merch store. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Please consult your medical providers for all of your healthcare needs. Also, the views and opinions expressed by the guests are not necessarily the views and opinions of the host and vice versa. Hi, today I'm here with Jilliann, and she's going to tell her story today. Jilliann, can you start by introducing yourself?
I'm Jilliann Swartfager. I'm 30 years old, and I have 3 kids. I have mild cerebral palsy.
Since cerebral palsy affects everyone a little differently, can you explain how it affects you and how it affects your life, like day-to-day life?
So mine being mild, it affects me with both my legs and then my left arm. So my left arm is weaker than my right. Like, my right is pretty dominant. I do everything when it comes to holding my kids, to doing the dishes, and like using the bathroom. Everything is my right arm. Like, you can tell. I don't know. That, like, I can't flip my right. Like, I can flip my right all the way. I cannot flip my left. So
Pronation and supination, turning the wrist.
Very tight muscles. I have very tight muscles. When I was 8, I had my Achilles lengthened, and then when I was 13, I had my groin lengthened for more. They wanted to get as much, my doctor wanted to get as much growth from my growth plate as they could, so I had my groin lengthened.
How far apart are the first two?
So our son is 9, gonna be 10 in February. Our middle child, she is 3, gonna be 4 in December. So we waited about 5.5 years, almost 6 years, before she was born. He was born in California. She was born in Alaska, and I actually went into labor with her.
You said earlier when we were talking that it was military based, so that's the moving around was military?
Yes, my husband joins the military after our son was born. We had our middle daughter at Anchorage, Alaska. I went into labor with her. It was 10:30 at night. My husband had been up since 3 o'clock in the morning because they rotated snow plowing their work, their work parking lot. They did rotations, and it was his rotation. And he was like, oh, he did it that whole week because he was like, oh, I'm gonna be off. Like, we're gonna have the baby. My scheduled C-section was on the following Monday. So I had her the 4th. I went into labor on December, the night of the 3rd, and my C-section was scheduled for Monday on the 9th. So that was pretty interesting. I didn't realize that I was in labor until my water broke, and I sneezed, random sneeze. I was like, oh, this is the second. So I kind of knew, and I was like, oh, I peed a little bit, because after multiple babies, even normal women, after multiple babies, especially when you're pregnant, kind of pee just a little bit when you sneeze. I mean, I still do, but I'm a year postpartum with my last. But I was like, oh, I peed a little bit, no big deal. And then I was like, oh, no. And I'm laying in bed, right? And I was like, no, this is not pee. And then so I went to the bathroom, and I sat, and I was like, it keeps coming, like, what? And then I stood up and looked at the toilet, and it was like clear. And I'm like, something's wrong. I was like, I labor. I wasn't feeling, this is the thing, I wasn't feeling any contractions. I was working too. So I was working part-time at Target. So I didn't know that I had been contracting all day. Like I was in labor. No, like I hadn't felt it. I didn't feel any contractions. I mean, I had felt tightening, but and cramping, but I was like, okay, I had that with my son. I never had Braxton Hicks or anything, but I was like, okay, it's kind of tight, and it's kind of like my stomach was, like my tummy was hard, but I was like, okay, whatever. Didn't realize that that was, labor. So I'd gone to work and did my thing. And anyway, I'm standing in the bathroom and I'm like, babe, I'm in labor. And he's like, he's already asleep. He's dead asleep because he'd been up for so long and then he worked all day. And I'm like, babe, wake up. I'm in labor. And he's like, he finally woke up. He's like, no, you're not. And I'm like, I said, feel my side of the bed. And he like felt it. And he was like, he sounded that I had never seen him so like sit up so straight and so quick in my entire life. And he was like, oh, you're like, he's like, what the heck? And obviously cuss words. And he was so surprised. And he's like, what the heck? What? I didn't have my hospital bag packed. My mom, so this is like a Wednesday. So Wednesday, December 3rd, my mom was supposed to fly in on the Friday. And she was like, oh, we'll go and get the rest of your hospital bag ready. And then we'll pack it during the weekend, and then you'll have everything that you need, and it'll be ready for Monday. Because since we live so far from family, she was going to come and help watch our son. Because we didn't really know. We had been there like literally 9 months, 9 to 10 months. We had been, No, we had been there a year. So we arrived the October before I had my daughter. So we had been there a year, like 15 months, whatever. So we barely knew anybody. So she was coming to watch our son. Luckily, I had one mom friend, my son's best friend. And I called her. I was like, hey, I know we barely know each other, but can we drop our son off? Because I'm in labor. And she's like, what the heck? I was like, I'm in labor. She's like, are you? I'm like, I'm gushing out some sort of bodily fluid. So yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm in labor. And she's like, oh yeah, no big deal. My son had never had a sleepover with somebody other than like my parents or my husband's parents. So it was the first time he had gone over to a sleepover, and I was and it's 10:30 at night on a school night. He was garden. So I felt so bad, like throwing him into this, like, oh, you're going to go stay the night at, your friend's house because mommy's in labor. Like I had to wake him up because we had to wake him up because he was already asleep. So as my husband's waking him up, I just grabbed whatever the hospital bag that I was going to pack and I just threw whatever I thought I needed in. And I was like, my husband's like, don't worry, if you forget something, it's okay. I'm going to go and I'm going to come back home anyway because I have to wash our sheets. I'm like, yeah, sorry about that. And I get to the hospital there and I'm like, I'm in labor, and they go and check me and I'm dilated, but not, a lot. And I'm like, my water broke, and they're like, okay, but you don't have any signs of labor other than that. And I'm like, but my water broke. So they had to go under the microscope. They even scraped my uterus to make sure that I was in labor. They couldn't read the microscope. They were having a hard time. I don't know what was going on, but 3 nurses came in and were like, are you sure you're in labor? I'm like, then what? I'm like, what the heck is coming out of me? I'm still losing fluid. My amniotic, I think it's my amniotic sac. I'm pretty sure I didn't pee. And then they finally hooked me up to monitors. Cause the head nurse was like, oh yeah, her water broke. And they finally hooked me up to monitors, and they're like, oh, there's a contraction. Oh, there's a contraction. You're not feeling these? I'm like, no, I'm happy. I'm smiling. I'm giggling. We're joking. Literally joking about, I'm joking with my husband because he wore snow boots to the hospital. winter. It was mid-December, so early December. So in Alaska, yes, there's going to be snow, but I always thought it was hilarious that he wore snow boots to the hospital. But babe, it was the only boots that only shoes that I could find that were safe. Okay, whatever. So we're joking about that. Like, oh, and then they're like, oh, that's a huge contraction. And then they're like, since you're not feeling any of these contractions, do you want to labor? They asked me point blank, do you want to labor? And I wanted to. Truly, in my heart, I wanted to labor. And my husband, not that this is a bad thing, but he said no. Not because he didn't want me to have the experience, but he remembered from my first C-section that my hips didn't spread. So, and he knows me that very well. He's like, Dave, your hips didn't spread that much this time. I don't see you. He goes, I don't want you to have another traumatic, not that my first was a traumatic labor experience. He goes, I don't want this to be a traumatic experience for you. So he didn't want me going through, hours and hours of labor that I couldn't feel to begin with, and then end up having a C-section at the end because I couldn't do it, or baby or me go into distress because we've had hours of labor and no progression. Or when it comes to pushing, I can't push because, and I know there are many people that have successful vaginal deliveries with C-section, with CP. That's not counting them out. Just for me personally, like he was saying that he didn't want me to have to go through it and end up having emergency C-section, because that would have been bad. Not bad, but like it would have been traumatic for me.
Since they didn't you didn't labor, what did they do to prep since you were already in labor?
They just did a normal C-section. They were like, okay, we're gonna get the on-call doctor. We're gonna get you ready for pre-op, and they did everything that I did the first time. It just was I was having contractions. They're like, she's having contractions, and they're like, we got to get this baby out fast. That was their concern, is they got to get this baby out fast before I progress anymore, and then I have no option but to labor.
Mm-hmm.
Because they didn't know how fast I was going to progress. So they wanted to get her out before either of us went into distress, if that happened.
The on-call doctor, was that the doctor you had been seeing for your pregnancy, or was that someone else?
So in the military, how it works for most, if you get seen on base, you just see whatever doctor you like. With her, with my middle, I had my checkups, my weekly checkups with a NP, so a nurse practitioner. So my last checkup I had with an actual surgeon, and she was like, I might not be able to be your doctor when you come in to deliver. It just depends. That's how they work. But fortunately, my checkup was literally, I want to say, the day before that. So I had the doctor that she was on call that day. So I actually had my doctor that I had previously seen. So that was kind of cool. So I knew her, so I was kind of familiar with her. So it was okay. It was not that bad. She's like, I didn't expect to see you so soon. And I was like, yeah, I didn't.
So once she was called in, you said it went pretty much like the first, as far as the surgery?
Yes, my bladder went from my previous C-section. My bladder had moved up to heal my uterus, or moved down. So my bladder and my uterus were attached. And apparently that's common.
I've never heard of that. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a common thing, but not so common at the same time. So what she did was she separated them for me. So it was a little bit longer surgery than it was, but after, like, they were like, they have, your film up and everything. And they asked, do you want to take the blue, they have the blue screen and then they have the clear screen. They're like, after everything's done and I'm getting ready to pull her out, do you want me to take the blue thing off? I was like, yes, I would love to be able to see you, like, pull her out and just see her. And they were like, yeah. So I got to do, like, they did that. They're like, okay, are you ready? I was like, yeah, is the blue thing coming out? I was so excited. I was like, is the blue thing coming off? And they're like, yeah. My husband giggling in my ear. He's like, you're so excited. I was like, yes, because I didn't get to do this the first time. They never gave me that option with our son. So I was like, yes, I'm so excited. So they pulled her out and I got to see her being pulled out. Really exciting. And then they went and checked on her, and then they immediately came back with her, and my husband held her for I had a really bad side effect with at least her. I was super itchy. Like, I remember from the spinal tap. It's not a spinal tap, the
Spinal block.
Yeah, the spinal block. I was super itchy. But that happens to me with anesthesia. All anesthesia. It happened to me when I was 8 years old and when I was 13. It wasn't as bad with my son, but with my middle, I was itching. Like, I had a big, like, red mark from itching on my chest even before my husband walked into the room. Like, that's how bad it was. And I'm like itching. I'm itching my nose, and my husband's talking to the anesthesia, like, is there any medicine that we can give her to, like, stop the itch? And he's like, dude, she's already maxed out on anti-itch medication. Like, she just needs to stop. But, like, literally, my husband hadn't even walked in the room, and he was already like, because he remembers how itchy I was after I had my son. Normally it happens after the surgery's done. And this time it happened right away. I don't know. Like, I just had a really bad reaction to it. And he's like, is she okay? He looked at the anesthesiologist, and because my doctors, I'm laying there like this, and my doctor's like, okay, you need to stop moving. Like, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm really itchy. Like, I'm like itching. And she's like, okay, like, just, you're okay. You need to stop itching. And I kind of calmed down once my husband came in, because he was there to, like, kind of take the nerves away for my second. So he's like, is she okay? Like, he was very concerned about how itchy I was. And the anesthesiologist was like, she's already maxed out. Like, I'm sorry, I can't do anything. And I went down pretty fast with her. My youngest was even faster. Like, I want to say the spinal block with my middle was, I want to say 2 minutes, and I was numb, and my last was 30 seconds. I was, like, literally sitting there. I was like, okay, I can't feel this is with my baby. I was like, I was sitting there. I was like, I can't feel my butt. And they're like, oh, wow, like, that hit you pretty fast. And I'm like, surprised. Like, normally it doesn't happen like that. So, and my daughters are both safe and healthy. Like, I can't, no NICU things with them. No, nothing bad happened to them. So
for the second, how long were you in the hospital for the C-section for that one? Was it still 24 hours?
I was in there for a little more than 24 hours. The only reason why I wanted to get out so fast was because I wanted to be able, I had not seen my son, and that was the first time that we had been apart for that long. So I had her Thursday morning. I was out of the hospital by Friday afternoon. Like, I went, like, my husband and I drove from the hospital to go pick up my son from school. So I did it with my son. It was 48 hours. And then with my daughter, my middle, it was about, I want to say 28 hours. But I had, that was my second C-section. I had already done, like, once they took my catheter out, Oh, yes. She was my catheter problem. I was peeing blood. So with her, no, with him, it was him. I was peeing blood. No, he was my catheter baby. Never mind. Sorry. You have to, with C-sections, to be able to go home, you have to like pee a certain amount. But with her, I did like off your catheter. Like I peed triple my first pee with her off my catheter. So they sent me home. They were like, we feel comfortable. This is your second C-section. Like you know what to do. You know, if any problems arise, come to the ER. So with her, it was a pretty smooth, other than going into labor. It was pretty smooth. Nights were a little bit rough. The night that I stayed in the hospital was a little bit rough just because my husband and I decided, like, my mom couldn't fly up to come take care of my son. So my husband had to stay the night with him. So we were separated at night, but that was okay. I just slept with her on my lap because putting her back in the bassinet by myself was somewhat challenging. And I didn't want to have to bug a nurse all the time. And by then, like 2019, the whole NICU thing, not NICU, but like infant nursery was kind of not around. Like they didn't want to take your baby unless they had to for tests and everything. So they didn't really have a nursery anymore that I could say, hey, can you go, take her and then give me a few hours of sleep and then bring her back when she needs to be fed. So I just slept with her in my arms. I know that's really bad, but I did it. I had the boppy. I brought the boppy. So
thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. And I loved hearing all your stories.
Thank you for let jab because I feel like I jabbed a lot.
No, it's fine.
Hi, this is Kelsey Cooper, and I'm the host for Disabled Birth Stories podcast. I hope those in the disabled community can enjoy these stories of bringing beautiful babies into the world and the journey along the way. I hope this podcast helps you feel seen, heard, empowered, and capable, no matter your journey to being a parent. I hope those who are able-bodied would listen to empathize with and support their disabled family member, friend, acquaintance, or random stranger. Thank you for listening, and feel free to email me if you have any questions or would like to be featured on the podcast at disabledbirthstories@gmail.com.
Thank you for listening, and feel free to email me if you have any questions or would like to be featured on the podcast at disabledbirthstories@gmail.com.